Redditors who have mistakenly walked in on people having sex. What's your story? My little sister's 16th birthday. I was definitely too old to enjoy myself. We had an olive grove down the back of our house. Later on in the night, I walked down there into a crowd that had formed. The group was standing around watching two kids doing it. For the first time. It still haunts my dreams. I was around 11 years old when it happened. I was in bed when I remembered that I had to return a library book the next day, but I forgot where I had left it. Cue me looking all over the house at night for it, and then entering my parents' room to find my mom riding my dad. I made direct eye contact with my mom for a few seconds before quickly closing the door and rushing back to my room. I work security on my campus. There were a few times walking in on couples making out or something, but one time I walked into the art building to close it up. I normally didn't check the basement because there wasn't ever really anyone down there. It's the play costume area. This night there was a play earlier, so I decided to check it. I walked through and there was this one door closed, but it had a small glass window. I saw one girl with her legs spread and another girl with her face in between them eating her out pretty voraciously. I knocked on the door and kinda ran and cleared the rest of the building, then went and checked to make sure they had left. I go to a small school, so I knew who the girls were. The eater is married now to a guy. I never really told anybody about it. I did pest control while in college, and for the apartments I sprayed I had a master key. The deal was that, after knocking for a minute, if no one came to the door then I went in and announced my presence just in case. Then I would spray, leave a card and lock back up. So I knock, no answer. I open the door. From the doorway I could see clear through into the bedroom and I could see the edge of the bed sticking out. What I saw were two giant trunks of legs hanging off the edge of the bed, bouncing, with a mostly naked woman riding on top. The woman screamed. I immediately slammed the door and took off to the next apartment. Never saw them again, thankfully. Side story. A month later in a neighboring apartment, I came across a guy beating on the door. He looked frustrated and he claimed his girlfriend lived there but wasn't answering the door. I told him I couldn't let him in, but I'd let him know if I heard the shower running or something while I was in there. I figured she just couldn't hear him. So I opened the door, again able to see clear through to the bedroom, and I can see the girl and a different guy curled up on the bed together. They were clothed, but she clearly got up panicked. I told her the first guy was outside, like she didn't already know. They got into a screaming match while I sprayed the apartment. I just kind of shot a gym face at the guy on the bed and got the hell out of there. I was probably 13 and home on a Saturday night. My parents had been drinking and listening to loud music in the living room, so I was in my bedroom. Around 10 PM I no longer heard music or talking, so I decided to go watch TV in the living room. Walked in on my parents doing it with all the lights on. They didn't see me and I immediately turned around and went back the way I came, mortified. Unfortunately we lived in an older house, so they heard the floors creaking as I rushed back to my bedroom. A few minutes later I heard my parents drunkenly stumbling down the hall, so I turned off my bedroom light and jumped into bed, pretending to be asleep. I heard them knock on my brother's bedroom door next to mine. He was 10. Since he was still awake and playing video games in his bedroom, my parents assumed he had been the one who walked in on them. My dad, who was pretty drunk at the time, launched into an hour-long awkward talk about the birds and the bees, while my brother sat completely confused as to what the f was going on. I threw a house party and put a sign on my bedroom saying off limits. A friend told me he heard someone in my room, so I entered and saw the prom queen riding a buddy of mine. I quickly exited the room. Later that night he came up to me and said, "I'm sorry about having sex in your bed, but at least you got to see Alex naked. We cool." And we shook hands and never spoke of it again. When I started my first job as a teenager I would always make sure to tell my parents when I got home, so they knew I had gotten home safe. I guess they forgot that that was the routine. Well, sure enough, walked into their bedroom with them in the middle of a passionate session. Good thing it was dark and I didn't really see anything. I just turned around, walked out, and never said anything ever again until now. PS. I also found a sex tape of my sister, but that's a different story. I think I might have issues cause of all this, but what can you do? Walked in on my buddy's girlfriend walking back to her room from the bathroom naked while he was putting pants on. He told me to come in because he thought she was getting dressed in the restroom, but she had left some clothes I guess. I just remember my thought process being that's a B. Boy is it red. Oh my god, that's Linda's B. After they shut the door and got dressed, she came out and teased me, saying my face was more red than her butt. I've never been more embarrassed in my life. Also, not her real name. She heard the door when I opened it and ran into their bedroom. The damage was done, and instead of hiding, she joked about it to make it less awkward. Let me set the scene. August 19th, 2017. I had just flown from a week in Cancun back to Australia. 24 hours later my housemates were having their engagement party in our backyard. I escaped the chaos ensuing outside and walked into our other housemate's room to see what he was up to. I'd be lying if I said I didn't walk in on a 6-foot white man absolutely smashing a slight Asian male in upside down missionary position. I casually shut the door and returned to the chaos outside, where they proceeded to embrace me 5 minutes later. What a time to be alive. Did it all the time as a college security guard. Cars, dorm lounges, classrooms left open for study late at night. Hell, even sidewalks. Always worried the cars were apes in progress. Most of the rest would just move along. We were near a red light district, so a few were likely prostitutes. Too old for college. A couple that stand out was a guy eating a girl in a car, and when I spoke to him he said they weren't doing anything, and his face had pubes all over it. Another, when we hit the lights, the man jumped over the back seat into the front and managed to spunk as he was mid-air. Would never have believed it. This was the 80s, so crushed velvet was still fairly common in car upholstery. That's gonna be hard to get out. The worst week for it was a junior high Bible camp. They'd rented a dorm for a week in the summer. Kids everywhere having sex. Walked in onto in the classroom building we kept open for late night study. Boy grabbed his clothes and ran. Girl, probably about 14, left naked alone in the room. She got a lecture about the value of picking a guy who won't run out on her, leaving her vulnerable to some unknown man walking in on her. G's just left her behind to fend for herself. A couple broke into our bell tower. People wanted to go up there to have sex. I had a couple of students offer to bribe me to let them in. I'd been up there. If you don't know, a tall bell tower will likely have bird crap all over the place. It reeks. It's not likely to keep her in the mood. I was young and naive and my older brother was quietly having sex with his girlfriend at our parents' house. I went to call them for dinner and opened the door. Neither of our rooms had locks. Thankfully they were under the covers and I immediately left, but my brother followed and slapped me round the head. I walked in on my roommate and his girlfriend in college. I think one of my classes was cancelled because it was the week before finals. As I opened the door they both yelled, "Dan, no," and I just saw my roommate's ass trying to shield himself and his girlfriend. I let out an insanely over the top laugh then left. About 5 minutes later he walked into our friend's dorm that I went to hang out in and he said, "We only had to make it one more week without this happening. Good times." Not walked in, but I could hear mom screaming. So when I was about 5 or 6, I was at home with my parents. Usual stuff. They leave me in the living room watching some cartoon while they go around do house chores. One time, I went upstairs to look for something and I just heard my mom in the room screaming like she is getting hurt. The door was locked. Immediately I thought, I don't know why, but I thought my dad was hurting my mom. So I was there knocking on the door screaming at my dad to stop hurting mom. And I remember my mom saying something along the lines of, "It's okay baby, I'm okay." Mom is okay between moans and screams. Now I'm 24, and I know why. Thought we were going to bundle in on my mates asleep, 2 of us wrapped in towels thinking, how funny it will be. We kick in the door and burst in. Turns out him and his boyf were full on naked noshing away, everything on show. We turn to run, but my mate gets out the door first and closes it behind him. I slam into the door face first, towel slips over my eyes and I can't get out. I was scrambling at that door for a good 30 seconds whilst the couple shout abuse at me. 30 seconds can be a long time. Freshman year of college, Everyone on our floor was friendly, and we had an open door policy, so we would often walk into each other's rooms to do things, like ask if people wanted to go to the dining hall together, or get a group together to play soccer. So, one day, one of my friends was under the weather with a cold. I thought on my way out the door to the dining hall I'd stop in his room and ask if he wanted me to bring him back some chicken soup. Little did I know his girlfriend had driven 4 hours to come surprise visit him because he was sick. I barge into his room as I always did, and the first thing I see is this girl on top of him, topless. So I did the only sensible thing. I asked if she wanted chicken soup too. 4 years later we're all still friends. Not as close as we were freshman year, but that's what happens over time. Walked in on my female flatmate having a 2-guy threes-way, and not like the 3-ways you seen in porn, where one's at the mouth the other is behind. It was like a sandwich. There was a dude on his back, my flatmate laying on top of him, and then the last guy was kinda lurched over the whole affair with his feet on the ground, but his torso on her back. We never discussed it, but it was one of the weirdest things I've ever seen happen, and actually put me off starting a relationship with her when the opportunity came up. So it's Halloween, and I'm 18 or 19 partying with my friends. A few friends were visiting from a different city and had a hotel room that we all ended up going back to. It was 4 girls and one of the girls' boyfriend. I had already thrown up outside of the hotel in the bushes, but I knew I'd have to do it again. We get all settled and some of the other girls are playing a card game whilst I had the spins. I remember jumping up and running to the bathroom. I opened the door and my friend's roommate was having sex with her boyfriend in the shower. I shut the door fast and say sorry, but I still had to vomit. So I was like, guys, get out. They told me to come back in. Me being drunk thought, okay, they are going to leave. Nope. They just closed the shower curtain. So I listened to them having sex while they got it onto the sounds of my puke. Not my story but a friend's. He and his girlfriend were doing the deed, and for whatever reason they had ended up in his parents' room. Well, they heard people coming up the stairs, so they hurriedly grabbed all their clothes and hid in the closet. His parents come in and get it on themselves. My buddy and his girlfriend had to sit naked in the closet trying to be as quiet as possible listening to his parents having sex.